Hi, friends. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Sidebar Media Podcast. Our guest is Rob Maaddi. Rob works for the Associated Press as the lead NFL writer. He's also a podcaster and a speaker. Rob is a Philadelphia native who has gotten to live out his dream of being a sports reporter, interviewing elite athletes, breaking news on trades, and being close to championship celebrations. But he'll also be the first to tell you that this isn't his identity. Rob's priorities are his faith, his family, and then his dream job. You can find Rob hosting the AP Pro Football Podcast, featured in AP bylines around the world, and hosting his own weekly Faith on the Field podcast. Join us as we listen to Rob's story and how he lives out his motto, make a difference, be a blessing. This is the Sidebar Media Podcast with your hosts, Robbie and Nicole Harper, where we tell the stories of those who tell the stories.
Well, I am super excited about today's guest. Rob Maaddi is a Associated Press writer who covers the NFL. And Rob, welcome to the Sidebar Media Podcast.
Hey, great to be here, guys. Really appreciate your flexibility as we take time to finally get this done. So it's great to join you guys.
Listen, Rob, we know that you are busy because you're important, but we've had to cancel on you because I had jury duty. So listen, if anybody is the person who's been a little diva, it's been me and my $75 I earned from jury duty for a week.
Hey, we're all important in our own eyes, so it's a wonderful thing.
That's right. That's right. Well, Rob, you've covered the Philadelphia Eagles for the Associated Press for many, many years. Tell us about your current role with the AP.
Yeah, Robbie. So I started with the AP back in 2000 as the Philadelphia sports writer. Was in charge of covering the Phillies, the Eagles, the Sixers, the Flyers, colleges, like everything, getting people, if I can't be at everything at one time, hiring freelancers, all that stuff. And then a few years into it, we hired a second full-time sports writer. So I focused on the Phillies and the Eagles for probably more than a decade, up until in 2021, I was promoted to the NFL beat. I had been covering a lot of the NFL in addition to the Eagles. Now I'm focused on the NFL only, lead NFL writer for the AP. Still maintain my Baseball Hall of Fame vote, which is pretty cool because I love voting for the Baseball Hall of Fame.
It's very cool.
But, yeah, so I cover the whole league, was able to relocate to the beautiful state, the Sunshine State of Florida, live outside of Tampa. And it's football I have found is, and I've known, but it's a 365-day-a-year job. Even when there is no football games on, like August through February, there's news, there's free agency, there's trades, there's signings. And what we found in the league, there's all kinds of misbehavior and everything else that's going on. So
no one ever acts up in sports, just like regular people never act up.
Right?
Never.
I wish they would all just like go home and hang out with their families and never get in trouble, but it's just not the way of the world right now.
Money tends to highlight flaws we already have. And so some of us have flaws, but may not be seen as much because we don't have as much money to get in trouble with.
That's a good point, because I think the bigger platform you're on, the bigger the spotlight that you're in,
the more pressure.
Your mistakes are highlighted too, as well, right? You're getting, and then people look at any celebrity, any entertainer, any athlete making all this money, and the expectation for greatness carries off of their profession, and they're expected to be able to handle all of that. And when you're young and 18, 19, 20, 21, signing guaranteed contracts for hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, I can't imagine what I would have done at 20, 21, or 22.
Good decisions would not have been made. No way.
Exactly. So the expectation of what we view these players to be, and then how they live their lives, it's difficult. And they need to surround themselves with people who are going to be positive influences. And sometimes that happens, and oftentimes it doesn't, and you got to bounce back.
Yeah, it's a lot of money to be handling these kids, of course. And now getting out of, professional end, now we're throwing NIL money at 17 and 18-year-olds. And I'm like, good Lord, I hope their mama and they got like a financial advisor and a good mama who's going to slap them back into reality if they need it.
Well, so many of these athletes, Rob, are put on a pedestal. What is, you kind of just talked a little bit about that, but what is a side to them that you see that not a lot of other people see?
The human side, really, honestly. Like I try and deal with these athletes as respectfully as possible. So I make a point not to be overly critical. You know, you can criticize. I feel like you can separate criticism of someone's on-field performance, right? Hey, if you go out there and you throw 4 interceptions and you're making the bad reads, you can, as a sports reporter, as a guy who's doing radio, TV, whatever realm I'm in that moment, I can be critical of the 4 interceptions or the 6 fumbles or whatever happens on the field. But I feel like oftentimes some people get personal. And especially in the social media age, they get personal with the digs and the trolling and the criticism. And it goes beyond what the guy did on the field, and it starts getting into their personal life, their situation, their upbringing, their background, whatever it may be. Some guys I find get criticized because they're believers, they're Christians, and there's criticism there too. So I try and really deal with everyone as professionally as possible, respectful of their situation, and go about it that way. And what I did a few years ago, when it was just put on my heart, really, guys, to highlight some of how can I use my platform. I had this incredible testimony, and I went through all kinds of issues. And when I came to the Lord in 2010, and then I tell people I was a fan of Christ, I became a follower of Christ, and then I joined the prison ministry team. We'd go preach to inmates while playing softball. I feel like I became a disciple for Christ, and I wanted to use my platform the best I can to get that message of hope, encouragement, inspiration out to everyone. Like, Jesus saved me from me. And I feel like so many people out there are struggling in different ways. And while I would never tell anyone, hey, don't get professional help, I know what helped me, and it was the Lord. So I'm so passionate about sharing that message that it's now 6 years. April 2017, I launched a show called Faith on the Field, and we started on ESPN Radio in Philadelphia. We've now been in 10, 12 different markets, and I interview Christian athletes and talk about the work that the Lord has done in their life. And our goal has been to be on as many sports radio stations as we can across the country. It's never been about Christian radio. It's always been about sports radio, because we want to penetrate the secular market. If someone tunes in to hear me speak to an interview with Tua Tagovailoa, and then we'll slide in a little bit about Jesus, or they'll hear me talk and interview Russell Wilson, and then we'll slide in a whole lot of conversation about Jesus. So that's been a really incredible opportunity, and we keep growing. There's challenges along the way, but we try and meet those challenges head on.
Yeah, I was was able to listen to the beginning of your interview with the Faith on the Field interview with Tua. And you were throwing some stuff down there, sir. I was about to start running around my car, get a little Pentecostal there on the outside. And I'm Southern Baptist, so that's, not something we do very much. That was a great interview. And it was great to hear the heart of someone who has a spotlight and is very well respected and has been through a really hard season. Good Lord, that poor man's head. To be able to share his faith and be able to talk about how he's persevering and how he's handling that with his family.
Yeah, what was really cool about that interview is Tua sits down with me, and it's at the Super Bowl, and it's his first time speaking to the media since all of those injuries happened, because he had suffered another concussion right around, it was on Christmas Day, actually, against the Green Bay Packers, and didn't play the rest of the season, missed the playoffs. So now he comes over, and if you've ever seen what Radio Row looks like at the Super Bowl, it's just a mass of media, radio. Now it's like Media Row, they call it, because there's TV and everything else. So Tua sits down with me to have this conversation, and all of a sudden there's 30, 40 reporters, cameras, everything crowded around wanting to hear what he has to say.
Now you've got a great audience for your message.
Yeah.
That's about to come.
We steered that conversation in a little bit about his faith, and he was so appreciative of that. So that was really cool. And I got this sense, he only had a limited amount of time. We only had 10 minutes together. Like he wanted to dive in more. He's like, oh, I got a more of a testimony. And I was like, we'll get to that certainly at a different point in time. So that was really cool to be able to sit down with him like that.
I was able to listen to the podcast that you did. You may have had more than one, but the one you did where you were on that and you started with Gronkowski. Listen, okay, sir, I've learned something about you in that moment. I didn't know anybody else did this. You don't like any condiments.
No.
None
at all.
The only other person I know who does that is my 14-year-old.
See?
And I about die.
He's ready for greatness. It's kind of like I just grew up eating plain food and then becoming like into health and fitness. I thought, hey, you never really need to add any kind of extra carbs or sodium or any other nonsense to your food. And it kind of stuck with me, but it's really mainly a taste and a smell thing. Like if I smell something and I don't like it, I'm not going to have it.
Yeah, that's his thing. He doesn't like anything vinegar based. So anything like mustardy I have problems because when I go to certain places, I'm like, give me all the sauces because I like the dip. I don't overboard. I just like to have a smorgasbord of them. But you said you eat your salad with no dressing. And I need to know if you're a rabbit. I don't know what that is.
I will squeeze lemon if that counts, but
that counts. It's something.
Okay. I don't need to do it. My wife insists on doing it. And I just got tired of that fight with her. So I'm like,
she's like, we're in public. People are going to look at you funny. Put something on it.
If it makes you feel better. It's funny when I go to restaurants, they always insist on bringing me a dressing on the side. Like, are you sure? We'll bring it on the side. What? And I'm like, okay, it's just going to sit there. But if it makes you feel better, I don't mind.
I love that they insist it. You're like, no, I'm really fine. No. You must be wrong. You need some dressing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, those were rapid fire interviews, though. I mean, I was listening to those. I can imagine you have a very short period of time to say what you want to say because they're moving through.
Yeah, and you know what happens too is like sometimes they don't warn you in advance, and depending on your platform, like I'm with the AP, so everybody wants to try and get their client on my show, and not to be in any way disrespectful or unappreciative. Some of those folks coming by, like I may not know who that it's not an A. Like Gronk comes by, I know Gronk.
Sure.
Tua comes by, I know Tua. Right. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they're bringing along someone that I may have to do a little bit of research on because they may not be as popular, and we're giving them a platform. So it gets a little bit tricky, and I surround myself with a good team to make sure that we're ready to go.
It's like speed dating.
Yeah, and I need to have a bad guy because I'm too nice to say to someone, hey, listen, we have no reason to interview your client. I apologize, but you can move on to the local radio station or the local. So I need a bad guy to do that because I feel bad to say that to someone. I feel bad to say like, no, I don't want to talk to him. So I have to have someone who's setting my schedule and handling all of that. So that helps. That helps immensely because I'm not the bad guy.
You just hold up a red card. Just go soccer. Just red card them. They have to move on. They cannot stay. All right, Rob. So what brought you from Philly down to Florida? Because that's a big change.
Yeah. So I spent from 2001 to 2021, I would spend every March in Florida covering the Phillies for spring training. And when I married Remy in 2010, and then we had kids, so twins were born in 2013, brought her and the kids. They spent every March of their life in Florida. So COVID happens. We're here for spring training, and the world shuts down like March 11, 12, whatever it is. And we're like, well, we're not going back to Jersey. We rented a place for a month. We're going to just stay here. And Florida was great because the beach was still open and we're on the beach. So we kept extending our condo and ended up staying in Florida for 3.5 months. And at that point, we're like, we never want to go back. So it was pretty awesome. We took a leap of faith. We built a house, and we built a house outside of Tampa and signed the paperwork. And I guess it was maybe August of 2020. Didn't have any confirmation of being able to move here. And then got promoted at the AP, and that promotion allowed me to live anywhere I want. So we chose Tampa. We told them we're choosing Tampa since we're already building a house there. And they're like, well, Tom Brady's there. So that kind of works for the NFL coverage too as well. It was a God thing. It was awesome. Really appreciated the timing was just, it couldn't be more perfect. Like that timing came through because as you all know, when the after COVID, everyone's moving to Florida, and the market just skyrocketed.
The market's psycho.
Yes, it's insane. So had we waited a year or had we waited 6 months, what we bought would have been just through the roof, like the pricing and everything else. So my wife came, we moved down here at the perfect time, sold in New Jersey at the perfect time. She's become a realtor since. She loves it because even though it's kind of leveled off a little bit, it's coming back again. So it's pretty cool. She just loves this area. So do the kids.
That's great. I'm glad you've found a home. Yeah, it's we have friends who are like, hey, I didn't know you lived in a $500,000 house. And they're like, neither did I, because that's not how much it was when I bought it. Yep. It's a little nuts. It's starting to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Or it's slowed down a lot. It's starting to come back a little bit again.
We've been in the situation of, we're here in Florida and have been our life, but we need a bigger house. And so we got kind of caught up in that wrong time of trying to move into a bigger house. And so we're biding our time.
Looking? I know a guy, or should I say a lady?
That's right. Yeah. a lady. That's right. Well, Rob, what was life like growing up a little bit for you? And I know, did you play any sports, and how did that relate to your career in covering sports?
Yeah, I did. So I grew up in South Philadelphia before we moved to New Jersey. And South Philadelphia was a very provincial area in Philadelphia. In my neighborhood was a lot of Italian people. So even though my parents are Middle Eastern, my mom makes the best spaghetti and meatballs and lasagna. And she, I consider myself an honorary Italian. But
I've got a quarter in me. My grandfather was full. And
can you make good pasta?
Not as good, but my grandmother, I'm pretty sure, was like German and English, and you thought the woman was Italian the way she could cook.
You have to, like, it becomes part of the fabric of society. So, but we lived across the street from a park, and I would spend all day and night in the summer playing baseball in that park, and played baseball all the way through college. Continued playing baseball in some semi-pro leagues along the way, played football, played a lot of flag football afterwards. Now that I got a little bit older, still trying to play, had every injury out there. I've torn my ACL playing football. I've had surgeries from playing baseball. My daughters now play co-ed flag football at 9 years old, which I thought was a little bit intense because some boys, rather than pull the flag, decide to tackle. So I'm not happy about that situation.
Listen, we're going to have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them in an all-girls flag football league where it's a little bit less intense than they get these boys who play in tackle leagues who want to then practice again in flag. I don't understand the mentality there. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but that's besides the point. So yeah,
these are my baby girls. They're tough, but I'm still going to come after you.
Exactly. Sports was always a big part of my life since growing up, and I was always the guy, Robbie and Nicole, that had the newspaper. Like back in the day, like I would take the sports section with me to class, and I'll never forget in high school, like I was a really good student, top 5 student, and all that stuff, but I didn't care so much for what they're teaching. I wanted to read that sports page, and I would take it with me to class, and one of my English teachers said, "Hey, listen, you gotta really expand your horizons. I understand." You love sports, but you know that's not something that you can do for a living. So you need to really focus on everything else. And
I guess you showed that person.
Yeah, it worked out for me very nicely. It turned sports into a career. It's really cool. Like some of these columnists, there's a couple of columnists of Philadelphia who I would be reading in high school. And then it came to the point where I'm in this job. I'm in Philly. I'm a Hall of Fame voter. I'm the president of the Philadelphia chapter of the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I nominated them for the writers wing of the Hall of Fame, and they got in. So here, like young Rob's reading about these guys, reading their columns. And then now as a professional, I'm helping, nominate and get them into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So that's been a pretty cool thing for me. It's been pretty awesome. But I knew all along in my life, like sports was going to be, once I realized once in college, I knew I'm not going to make it past college. I'm not going to be a Major League Baseball player. What better than to talk, write, and report on athletes for me? And it's been an awesome ride.
Well, somewhere along the line, you've honed your writing skills because you do it very, very well. And you've written some books.
And apparently
too.
very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. And you've written some books too. And one, I guess the most recent one is The Birds of Prey, the story about the 2017 championship Philadelphia Eagles. So what was your motivation for writing that book?
Yeah, that book came together pretty quickly after that season. I have never in my now 23 years of covering sports witnessed or been around a group of men who were more mature in their walk with the Lord as that 2017 Eagles team. There's a lot of men of faith in sports, but that team, for one reason or another, they were close. There was a nice circle of men on that team who were really close, went to the same church, and they were very mature in their journey. Like, they understood what it meant to not only walk the walk and talk that talk, but to go out there and use their platform. And it was the same year that I launched Faith on the Field. So a bunch of those guys were on Faith on the Field, and it fell into place. They go and win the Super Bowl. Now I know their story. I know their history. I'm covering them day in and day out. And I witnessed like all of this growth within this team and knew that a handful of those players were baptized in the team's like cold tub the year prior. Like, they were preparing themselves. So I reached out, my literary agent reached out to a bunch of publishers, HarperCollins, Zondervan jumped on it. And I was in Florida for spring, because to come back, they win the Super Bowl. We put together the package. We send it out there. I was here in Florida for spring training, signed a contract on March 31st. And like, all right, we need everything by May 15th. So I had 6 weeks to write. Gosh, I don't know how long that book was. It was probably 200 some pages, but I knew the stories. They were all there. Everything I had covered and written about. So it was awesome. Then went to Nashville and recorded the audio of that. For those who don't want to read and just want to hear the story, you have to listen to me speak it for about 9 hours or 10 hours.
Listen, it'd be better to listen to you than some other just random. I love it when authors record their own.
Oh, yeah.
Because you add the personality in there and the inflection of what you meant when you wrote it.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I remember being in Nashville recording, and it was just like so powerful to be able to then not only read it but to speak it, you know. And I thought that was pretty awesome, and that led to a bunch of like opportunities too. Afterwards, I would go and I would sign books, speak at churches all throughout the Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware Valley area. So it was a great run for a couple of years. Then COVID hit, and all of a sudden now churches had to change their situation. I did some Zoom conversations. Now finally getting back into it. I just love being able to go around and talk to kids, speak at churches. Just last week, I was back up in the Philly area again, actually suburban Philly. Took a player from the Eagles, Brandon Graham. We went into 2 public schools, but we were brought in by a youth group that is run by a very strong Christian man. And he said, listen, we're bringing you into these 2 public schools, and I can't tell you what not to say. And I knew exactly where he was going with that. He said, so he's like, you do what you want to do. So we gave him a message of hope and encouragement and inspiration, but there was no way I was flying up to Philly, leaving my wife and kids, and not sharing a little bit about Jesus with 2,000 high school students. So it was
That's amazing.
Cool.
And I would imagine it was somewhat well received in Philly, because we know Philly fans are known for their chill. No, absolutely not. Philly fans are not known for chill anything.
You are
and to them,
right.
It's great. To the rest of us, we're like, calm down, Philly. But I mean, they're passionate.
Very
people.
passionate people. Yeah. That's the nice way to say it, to be honest. That's the nice way to say it, because you can go beyond passionate and add a few adjectives.
And some are just very passionate.
I've never seen a sporting event in Philly, but I remember my parents went up and saw a Phillies game. They were visiting some clients up there, and the stories, it was just like, it was interesting. Passionate fans, that was interesting. So
His father was not a man of many words, so if he said it was passionate and interesting, you could just read between the lines on what he saw. We're Braves fans.
Don't wear the opposing team's colors.
Yeah, they were Braves fans. We're Braves fans, so don't do that.
I think they went kind of neutral. So I think that was the safe bet.
Smart.
As observers.
Are there any other books coming, Rob? Anything on the horizon?
I would love to have some time to write a few different books. Like I've thought about doing a Faith on the Field type book.
That would be great.
It's the conversations that I've had. We're now probably 250 episodes or so in. There's a ton that I can pull out from there and maybe do. But it requires so much time and effort that it's something.
Apparently it takes 6 weeks.
I need to be able to get it done. I need to be able to. There's a couple books in my mind that I want to do. A fan, follower, disciple story. Just my story of how I grew up in the Catholic Church and then really came to Christ when I realized that it wasn't about all the good works that you do. It's about accepting him as your Lord and Savior, and how that transformed my life and how that changed everything. And then using that platform, I feel like this is something that's really important, because I tell everyone wherever I go, you don't need to have a platform like mine or an opportunity on a microphone or whatever it is. Take Jesus to your marketplace right there in wherever it is that you are, wherever you find yourself, your sphere of influence, your circle of friends, your school, your workplace, your neighborhood, wherever it may be, everyone can take Jesus to their marketplace. And it doesn't even have to be preachy. It can start with just the way you live your life, right? Just the way we handle adversity makes people want to look at us and go, wow, you handled that situation way better than I would have. What is it about you that keeps you so calm? Well, I have this hope and peace in Christ. There it is, right there. And you start that conversation, and and you never even had to say anything until they approach you. So that to me is something I'm very passionate about.
Well, you might have more time for books if you weren't AP and have breaking news. I mean, even this podcast, you've got things that are breaking and you're having to handle them. It's not a job that stops. And like you said, NFL goes all year. I mean, every sport goes all year round, but the NFL is so loved by the US that it's a constant thing. I mean, we're college football people and we like NFL, but we don't have like a team. So we're just kind of like consumers of NFL, but it's like, good Lord, the minute it stops, they start right back up again with talking about who's going to win the championship next year. And I'm like, the confetti isn't even vacuumed up from the field from this year.
I came home from the Super Bowl. Super Bowl was like a 95-hour work week for me. It was insane. I just shut life off for like 3 days. All I wanted to do was just sit on the couch and hug my kids. I didn't care about anything else. I didn't need to go to the beach or anything else. And then within a week, it's like, all right, the NFL Combine, and it's Indianapolis, and we got to get ready for that. And then the Combine's over. Then it's NFL free agency, and now free agency started. Now it's the NFL draft, and next week I got to go to Kansas City for 4 days for the draft, and then come back from that. And I'm hoping to take a little bit of time in May. I'm really looking forward. May's our wedding anniversary. It'll be 11 years this year. So hopefully I would like to take a continuous week off, like uninterrupted. Sometimes I'll take 3 days and then there's breaking news and I got to jump in there. Like if I could take 7 straight days off, that's a win for me.
Wow.
Well, call Roger Goodell and tell him that for a week, he just needs to tell everybody to chill.
Yeah.
Chill for a week. Rob needs a break.
Yeah. And if I had just 1/65th of Roger's salary, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah. No complaints there. No complaints there at all. Well, I mean, you are incredibly busy. I mean, NFL season just, even though it stops, that your work doesn't stop. And as if you weren't busy enough, you writing for the AP and doing the Faith on the Field show, you've got the Pro Football podcast. Was that your idea? How did that come about?
So I had done a lot of radio in Philadelphia. Before I moved here, I was a weekend host on 97.5 The Fanatic, been on other stations in Philly. So I had that experience hosting radio shows. And as podcasts started to grow and it became part of, now I think people listen more to podcasts than they do actual radio. Like it's pretty wild and it's pretty cool too. probably, I believe it was like 2018, we did a podcast and then didn't do it for a year. And then it's been now continuous week in and week out, even during the off season. I've been doing an AP NFL podcast since I think the beginning of either 19 or 2020. So it's awesome because I get an opportunity to interview all these guys, and then a lot of carryover, because if I know that they're a believer, I'll interview them for the AP podcast, and then I'll also have them on Faith on the Field show. So sometimes people say, hey, I heard that interview. I'm like, you didn't hear the full interview because you heard the football part on the AP podcast. You didn't hear the Jesus part. That's coming up on Faith on the Field. So,
which is a fascinating part of it.
Yes.
They take off the professional hat and they put on the more personal hat, and you're really getting into the heart of how people are handling their life and their sport and the pressure and how God is influencing all of that.
Yeah, and it's such a big influence, right? I feel like if you're strong in your walk and your foundation is Christ, well, that's going to impact everything you do. And too often media doesn't want to hear God talk, they call it, or Jesus talk, and they ignore that. But what makes a player get to the point where he's at, where he can able to handle and be able to overcome adversity, to be able to challenge themselves, to push themselves to do better. It's their upbringing, it's their foundation in the Lord, it's their ability to navigate all of these difficult circumstances because of their faith. And if that makes the player who he is, I feel like it should be highlighted, and I'm more than willing to highlight that and be one of the few. I'm looking forward to a day where that becomes more mainstream and more people will talk about that and write about that. But hey, for now, if it's Faith on the Field and we're the ones, we'll be the leaders. We're fine doing it.
Well, and that is a little bit of what we do here. We're telling the stories of those who tell the stories. So you're a face, you're a personality, and the fact that your name is, you're on television shows, your name is on AP bylines, your name is there, but how has life altered and changed who you are to change you to who you are today? And so Jesus is a part of your story. Your upbringing is a part of your story. And so we're really glad that you're able to share some of that with us today.
Well, I love that, and I thank you for that opportunity, because it's been quite a journey. It really has. And I say the first 10 years of my life as an AP sports writer, I was a completely different person. I knew Jesus. I was a fan of Christ, but I wasn't a follower, and I wasn't living for him. I was living for myself. I was living for the world. I was living for selfish reasons. I was doing my thing for fame, glory, wealth, chasing everything out there in sight. And I realized at one point when I finally had, or it looked like I had everything I wanted, I was broken and empty inside. And it wasn't until I came to Christ on August 29, 2010, surrendered my life to him, that I finally found true peace and fulfillment. And for me, it wasn't in what the world values. It's in just having that relationship with the Lord and knowing that no matter what I do, it's not about my accomplishments. It's about what I'm giving back, and who I am is far more important than what I do for a living.
It's very important. You've balanced it so incredibly well that, I mean, the fact that you have this relationship that you've built with these players and are outspoken about your faith and still able to work for the Associated Press and not compromise on who you are is incredible. What is your most memorable interview or article?
I think it's the Buccaneers winning the Super Bowl in 2020, that season, because it was the COVID year. We had started building our house here. We knew that we wanted to find a way to come here. And that was the first Super Bowl that I wrote. I had covered 8, 9, 10 Super Bowls. That was the first one that I wrote the main story, the game story. And Tom Brady and the Bucs win that. And it's his first year after leaving the Patriots. And they went through such an incredible journey themselves that year. He comes in and they're not like world beaters, and they're struggling midway through the season at 7-5. And then they go on a nice run and finish and win. And then being able to, even though it was the Zoom COVID post game, still we had to do it. I got the first question post game to Tom Brady. So that was pretty cool to be able to write the game story, see my byline on the Buccaneers winning that Super Bowl all across the world and all these newspapers. In fact, I have several of them hung in my office. And then just to be able to talk or ask Tom the first question after that was awesome, because then quickly I get the promotion. We move here, and then the Bucks become my daughters they're Bucks fans, and one of them wears Tom Brady like a jersey and a hat and all that for Halloween. And then I get to show him that, like, hey, look, my daughter Melina was you for Halloween. And he's like, oh, that's really cool. Let her know I love it. And that was pretty awesome. So all of that has been very memorable for me, because it's involving my kids and involving my family too.
Yeah, the girls are old enough to really appreciate what Dad does for a living now.
Now, yeah. Before when I was in Philly and they were like 2, 3, 4, 5, they didn't know, they didn't care. I take them to some radio shows. They pull out some random winners from hats and have fun doing that when we did shows at different restaurants and stuff like that. But now they get it. They're like, hey, when can we go back and do that again? I'm like, well, we're in Florida now, so I'm not flying up to do a radio show in Philly.
They'll have to start their own in Tampa.
I think we can. We can make that happen. One of my daughters has 250,000 YouTube subscribers at 9 years old.
What?
Wow.
I don't even understand what she does with Roblox, but that's what Roblox, whatever that game is.
Yes, my children want me to buy them Robux for Roblox. I'm like, I'm not giving you my real money to go buy fake things. Not doing that.
They're into that game too. Maybe they're.
I need to buy you eggs to eat, real food.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
That's amazing. Look, she's following her daddy's footsteps. She's got that media bug.
That's true.
She's got more followers than I got. That's for sure.
That's true. What is one of the most craziest experiences you've had while covering sports? I know here in Florida, we had a guest and we asked him about his craziest Florida man story. So I don't know how that relates to sports or the experience of a Florida man and how that goes, but what's one of the craziest things that you can remember?
Because you are one.
You
now.
are one. You
get to be one with the rest of us.
I'm a Florida man.
Join the club.
I love that. One of the craziest sports experiences. I will say that whole 2020 COVID year was just weird. It was strange for us because we're no longer in the locker room. We're no longer being able to get to know these guys and ask questions one-on-one.
Well, you're Zoom interviewing the Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
That's weird right there, right?
Everything was in a group setting because the teams were doing Zooms, and then we'd have 18, 20 different media people, especially when in Philly, it's like 30 media people, whatever it is. And you got to raise your hand in the chat and ask a question, and everybody's getting access to all of the information at the same time. So it's not like you can build a relationship, ask some questions or whatever. Now, it's different, of course. Some guys you could text, you have their number, you can reach out to them that way. But in general, week in and week out, all of the interviews, all of the news conferences are right there on Zoom. It was difficult. It was challenging for a lot of media people because there wasn't a lot of anything coming out that was new that someone else didn't have. And you weren't discovering or trying to figure out really what makes a player tick, what makes a team so good. Like if that Eagles team in 2017 had won in 2020, I could have never written that book. I wouldn't have had those personal relationships with those guys to know that they're getting baptized in the whirlpool, that they're going to seeing them at church, knowing that they're praying, knowing that they're listening to worship music in the locker room, doing Bible studies. I couldn't have had that kind of access in 2020. So it was a difficult, challenging, in many ways, crazy year. And I'm glad we came out of it and came through it and are better for it.
Yeah.
Is the access to your players easier again?
It's funny because at that point, players liked it because now they don't have media inside the locker room or in the clubhouse or whatever sport it may be.
They can shut the camera off when they're done.
Yeah,
like just shut it off.
They walk off the Zoom and they're done. And then their players associations like, the old days are finished. We'll never go back to the old days because we just proved you can do this for 2020, and half of 2021 really was also like that. But the media organizations, whether it was the pro football writers, baseball writers, NBA writers, were able to get back that access, and it's almost back to normal, completely the same.
Yeah,
that's great. In our house, we have things that we called COVID keepers. We're like, that's a COVID keeper. We like how that worked, and we're going to keep it. And there's others where you toss them out. So I'm glad the access is back.
Well, one COVID keeper I love is I've always been someone who carried around my sanitizer like for years. I'm just a germaphobe, and I wish people would still do that. And I've noticed like I'm seeing dudes in the men's room at the gym or in a press box somewhere, and they're not washing their hands anymore. That forget the 20, 30 seconds. They're just not doing it. I'm like, well, I'm not shaking hands no more because what happened? I wish we can go back to the germophobia of 2020.
Some of that was nice. Yeah. At least if you're not going to refill the hand sanitizer machine, take it away, because now I'm just looking at it empty and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Really? Come on now.
There.
Come on.
You've talked a little bit about your faith and how important that is to you in your life. What's one side of Rob Maaddi that not a lot of people know?
It's a good question.
I feel like you're a pretty open book.
Yeah.
You're like, here I am.
I've put my story out there quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, people didn't know you didn't like Condiments. We've released that. Breaking news.
All of it's out there. I'm extremely emotional. And I think that's one side that people, I mean, I'm sure they've seen the emotional side. I've spoken in front of thousands and sometimes cried right on stage, but I'm extremely emotional to the point where sometimes I just have to like get away from something, get away from a moment, or like I lost my dad last August, so I won't watch some movies or some TV shows. I right now it's not even been a year. I won't watch if there's a funeral scene or anything like that. So I'm extremely emotional in many ways, sentimental too, which drives my wife nuts because like I will have things that are 15, 20, 30 years old, like whether it's a birthday card or a note from someone or something like along those lines. I got like these. So I'm a football writer, right? I grew up with loving these little football helmets. I don't know if you remember this, guys. We used to go to like, instead of getting bubble gum out of it, like you put a quarter in and you turn and you get a football helmet and
like the ones at the front of the grocery store.
Yes. I still have the ones from like when I was a kid.
Oh, that's impressive.
I still like when I was a kid. I still have those. Which
I'm surprised your mama didn't get rid of them. Or somebody else.
They somehow they're in it right now. They're in a Nike shoebox in my office. So
perfect.
Yeah, overly.
Just tell her to stay out of your office.
She'll say I'm a hoarder.
You're going to hoard it. It's going to be your own space.
Exactly.
I actually remember as a kid having an Eagles helmet at some point. I don't know where that is, but I remember getting an Eagles one out of that. So that's funny. What are you most proud of in your life, Rob?
Being a dad, being a father to Alexia and Melina. I tell them every day that they're my greatest blessing. And no matter what I accomplish in life, you know, nothing that's going to go on my wall, no degree, no amount of money in accounts in a bank or cars in a driveway or houses or anything else will ever measure up to being a loving dad. And they're still at the age where they're daddy's girls, and I hope that they will forever be daddy's girls at 9. But we sit together at night, we pray every night together, and we cuddle, and it's just to me, it's the greatest thing in the world, and I am most proud of that. Being present, being in their life, being active in their life, and as difficult as it is sometimes traveling, FaceTime and text. Now that they're texters, they're awesome. So
maybe you should tune into her YouTube channel. Yeah, you'll get to spend more time with her.
We get to stay in touch even when I'm on the road, like overly. So that's pretty cool. Except when I get that text, "Daddy, come home now," and it's like Super Bowl Sunday, and I'm like, you know, there's a game and another day of travel. Like I can't literally come home now. So
yeah, Daddy still has to pay for the food you're eating.
Yes,
so it still has to happen.
But then I'll get like 10 heart emojis after that. So that makes me feel a little bit better when I can't.
Usually I just get poop emojis. My kids think those are hilarious.
Not there yet. I hope I don't get to they get to that point where they're sending me those, but that
they just think they're funny. It's not that they're being obscene with it. They just, the world of emojis is open.
You got boys,
to them,
right?
And they're just
you got boys.
We have a boy, girl, boy.
Boy, girl.
So our girl is 9, so she's close. She's right there with your girls.
They're our legacy. I mean, they're watching everything and what we do, and so it's an important thing to not take for granted. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt.
So the last thing, I read that your motto is make a difference, be a blessing. And I feel like through this conversation we've had, you've given us a little bit of a peek about that, but how do you demonstrate that?
Wow, so that's not only my motto, it's my sign off. So every radio show I do, even when I just do sports, not just Faith on the Field, even the AP NFL podcast that I do, I just sign off with, I'm Rob Maaddi, reminding you, make a difference, be a blessing. And I feel like every day making a difference in someone's life is important. Being a blessing to the people within our own household and to the world around us. That's what it's all about. Like it's, as I said a little bit earlier, it's not about accumulating things. It's about giving back and how can we help everyone else be a better version of themselves, be a blessing to someone, some way, somehow. We go out in this world and we see so many people who are struggling in different ways, and even holding a door for somebody might be a blessing for a moment. Somebody cares. There was it might have been a year and a half, 2 years ago. I will never see someone who's asking for something and not stop and speak to them. And I know people tell you, hey, they're begging for this and maybe they should, whatever. I just can't. I can't see someone in need with a sign and not stop and give them something and talk to them, because I think of Matthew 25:40, whatever you do for the least of my brothers and sisters, you do for me. Like, to me, that's Jesus there, and you have to do something for them. So there was a time, when was it? It was, we were driving to Florida. We stopped at a hotel somewhere. North Carolina, it may have been. We always stopped on the way, and I saw a guy at the front desk, but it was like a smaller hotel. He was sweeping, he was mopping, whatever it was. There was something heavy on his heart, it looked like to me, and I just said to him, "Hey, man, Jesus loves you." Not thinking anything of it. I say that to a lot of people. I just say, "Hey, Jesus loves you," and just try and bless them that way. Let them know. Well, maybe a month later, I don't know what it was, guy reached out to me, and he obviously had my information from checking in and whatever. And he said that day he was going to commit suicide. He was, that was it. And he said he prayed if he's like, he wasn't much of a believer. He said, if there's a God out there, and if you're out there, send me a sign that this is not like, there's hope. There's something for me, that someone loves me. And he said, you telling me Jesus loves you, just saved my life. And he looked me up. He started listening to some Faith on the Field. There was a specific show that he listened to that meant something to him. Derrick Henry from the Tennessee Titans. Then Derrick Henry paints a cross on his face when he plays. And right now, I'm not remembering what that conversation with Derrick was about, but it kind of impacted this man. And he just sent me this note. So it's something as little as trying to make a difference in people's lives by being nice to them, by trying to be a blessing in their lives. We never know the impact, the gravity of that, how much weight that carries. Just a simple, hey man, Jesus loves you. In that moment, I was the right person who came along to say this to this man at the hotel, that he says, I don't know this, but he says it saved his life. So I feel like so many of us are in we have these opportunities. It costs nothing to be nice. It costs us nothing, zero, right?
To see someone. It costs you nothing to see someone.
To just be nice. That's all we have to do.
Yeah. Well, that's very well said.
Great story. Wow.
That's a great story.
What an encouragement to you to continue being that person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my wife says this to me sometimes, and she's not overly complimentary. She's like, you're consistent. She's like, I'm proud of you. I love you for your consistency. You never waver. You're always consistent with that.
You're consistent with the way you hold on to tiny helmets, how you love your children, and how you are kind to people.
Telling people Jesus loves them. Consistent. That's it. Yep. Be consistent. So.
Well, Rob, you are, it sounds like you are making a difference and are a blessing to many. You're a blessing to us for even giving us the time to be here. And just, we continue what you're doing and continue making these relationships with players and listeners and readers and all of those things.
And we're going to continue listening to Faith on the Field because it's a really fun podcast and it's really
I appreciate
touching. That. Whether you're a believer or not, there's something there to brighten your day.
I appreciate that. And people ask me, hey, what time is it on this station? I'm like, don't even worry about that. We're on stations for the people in those areas and in those markets to listen. You can go back and listen at your convenience on the podcast. That's all you have.
And go find the one you want to listen to.
It's the easiest way to do it. Don't worry if we're on at 10 a.m. here, 9 a.m. there. It's all good. Just listen to the podcast. So thank you.
Well, if people want to follow you, Rob, how can they do that?
At Rob Maaddi on Facebook and Twitter, Maaddi. There's a fake on Instagram, so I had to add at real Rob Maaddi. I don't know if
why do people do that? Do you have to put real in front of your name?
Although the one who was the fake Rob Maaddi did have he picked a good picture I was happy with. So I was like, if you're going to be a fake, like don't pick a terrible photo of me. So that made me happy for a minute, but it also, now I can't go back to it. Like Instagram won't let me change because I don't know if the fake is out. So it's at real Rob Maaddi. Long story short.
Well, it's good to know you're real.
Thank you.
At least I won't get taken.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated.
Rob, we thank you so much. And, we're glad to know you and just keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And you continue to make a difference and be a blessing as you are in your daily walk.
Thanks, Rob. It was great. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Sidebar Media Podcast, brought to you by Blue Bridge PR. If you would, please like and subscribe and check out some more information about today's guest. We'll see you next time.